What is up, my bodyweight warriors, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at my current intense middle split routine. If you've been following me for a while, you'll know that middle splits have always been my weak point. I'm not really a supple dude in particular. I have put a lot of time and effort into my mobility training, but I've never put that time, consistency or volume into the middle splits. But this is all changing, and for the next several weeks until Christmas or until I reach my goals, I'll be following the routine that I'm about to describe to you in this video in hope to improve my middle splits. In this video, I'm going to share with you the routine that I will be following, as well as how many times a week I'm going to be following it and what I'm doing on a daily basis to help with my middle splits. Before we jump into the actual routine, I just want to give a shout out to Emmett Lewis. The routine is basically what he describes in one of his Facebook posts with a few modifications. So massive shout out to him. You've probably heard me mention him before because he is so helpful when it comes to this whole mobility stuff. He kind of just gives out a load of good free information. So if you want to check out Emmett Lewis, if you want to check out the routine, if you want to check out anything I'm going to talk about today, as well as Ardor, who are the people who make these sexy apparel that I'm wearing in this video and pretty much all of my videos, then head into the description down below, check it out, check them out. Let's jump into the routine. So the main bulk of the routine is going to be made up of 4 core movements. First is the weighted Tailor pose. This is going to be used to open up the groin, add a loaded stretch onto the abductors and pectineus, as well as activate the glutes and really open up those hips. The next exercise we're also going to be looking at is the horse squat. We're going to be using this to build strength in the adductors and glutes to actually hold ourselves in that side split position. It also has the added benefit of being a little bit nicer on the knees than just a standard middle split hold, which is our next exercise, just a standard side split isometric hold. This is also to build strength in the adductors and the glutes and the musculature around the side splits, but it's also to get comfortable in that position. A lot of mobility and flexibility comes down to the CNS. The reason we're tight or we can't move through ranges of motion often is that our central nervous system is stopping us from going into that position. It thinks that we're going to injure ourselves or we're not in control or strong enough to hold that position. So that is what we're trying to teach ourselves here. We're trying to say, yes, I can go and sit in a middle split, no worry. The final exercise we're going to be looking at is the weighted pancake or seated good morning. This is basically more targeted around the lower back and the hamstrings. However, it is going to be useful at teaching us some articulation in our hips, specifically getting that anterior pelvic tilt, because that will also help in our middle splits. So how does this look in a routine? Well, the routine is pretty simple. First of all, we want to make sure we warm up. As you probably are aware, loaded stretching is a little bit more intense than just standard static stretching. So I recommend doing a basic lower body warm up here. The first exercise grouping we're going to be using is with the Tailor pose and the horse squat. For the Tailor pose, you're simply going to need to find a space with something to support your back against and 2 weights of the same weight. You're going to sit down with your back to the wall. You're going to bring your feet together and pull them as close as you can to your body. You're then going to pick up the weights and put them on your knees, and this is going to add a little bit of resistance. We're then going to go from that seated position, keeping a neutral spine and our feet pressed together. We're going to rep out up and down with the weights on our knees. We're going to go for 10 reps, and then on the last rep, in that bottom position, in the most stretched out position, we're going to hold it for between 30 and 60 seconds. Emmett recommends, I think, 20 to 30 seconds, although I've found from speaking to some gymnastics coaches in my uni that they recommend going for a little bit of a higher rep range, and I don't see any harm in this. We're then going to pair that with horse squats. So the horse squat is very simple. I will link to a full tutorial in the description down below. We're simply going to go for a 5-step horse squat here. You're going to start with your feet together, twist your heels out, twist your toes out, twist your heels out, twist your toes out, sink down, and then twist the final heels out again. We're then going to grab our weight. You can hold it below like a sumo deadlift kind of position. You can hold it in a front squat position, or you can hold it like you would in a back squat. Whatever works for you. I personally find that I can get lower in the position when I hold it in that kind of sumo deadlift position. You're then simply going to rep out a horse squat, going up and down for 10 reps. Each time you should be trying to sink a little bit lower into the stretch. And on the last rep, you're going to want to hold that bottom position for anywhere between 10 and 30 seconds. That is the first grouping of exercises. We're going to be performing that for anywhere between 3 and 5 sets. I will detail more about this later. And you're going to be wanting to rest for about 60 seconds between each of the exercises. The next exercise is the pancake or seated good morning. This is a bit of an optional extra that I've kind of wedged in there simply because it matches the movement pattern that I'm training in terms of loaded mobility. For this exercise, you're simply going to want to sit in a straddle position. If you're really quite good and flexible, you can sit on the floor. If you struggle a little bit, you can elevate your hips. I currently use probably a couple of centimeters of foam. I find it just gives me a little bit more of an effective exercise, although you can raise the hips up to like 30 centimeters, 50 centimeters, depending on your flexibility, whatever helps you keep that neutral spine. We're then going to put the weight on our back and we're going to fold at the hips, maintaining a neutral spine and sinking as low as we can towards the floor. Wrap it back up. We're going to do this for 10 reps. And on the last rep, we're going to be holding it for 10 to 30 seconds in that bottom position, making sure you maintain a nice neutral spine. We're going to be performing this exercise for anywhere between 1 to 3 sets. The reason it's got less volume for me is that it's just not a priority. If you want to add more volume here, feel free. Again, we're going to be resting about 60 seconds between sets. Then we move on to the final exercise, and that is middle split isometrics. They are pretty simple. You're essentially just going to start from a straddle stand and you're going to slide your feet out as far as you can go. Once you get to the furthest point you can get to, move them in a couple of centimeters, and that's the position we want to be working. The key with this exercise is finding the right resistance of floor. If it's too slippery, your feet are just going to slip out, and if it's not slippery enough, you're not going to be able to get your feet wide enough. So you want to find a nice in between. We're just going to be focused on keeping a good amount of tension on our abductors and glutes and being strong in that position. Breathing is very important when you're holding this position as well, saying to your nervous system that you're comfortable in this position. We're going to be performing this exercise for anywhere between 3 to 5 sets, and again resting 60 seconds between those sets. But that is kind of the routine, guys. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. In terms of how often I'm performing this routine, I am sticking to a twice weekly schedule as it falls in the same amount of times that I train lower body. If you're going to do it any less or any more, I would recommend either increasing the volume and doing it less frequently, or decreasing the volume, total sets, and doing it more frequently. Just find what works for you. I think twice a week will be plenty. In terms of the reason there is a range in the sets, we want to apply a periodization and a progressive overload just as we would with any other strength training. Emmett recommends moving up progressively in terms of sets week by week, and then deloading. So it'd be week 1 you'd do 3 sets in each position, and week 2 you'd do 4 sets, and then week 3 you'd do 5 sets, and then week 4 you would deload back down to 2 or 3 sets, start over, you'd increase the reps per set, or you'd increase the weight in that progressive overload fashion. As for a few tips for beginners with this routine, I want to make a few recommendations. The first is avoid the middle splits completely for at least 1 cycle. So this would be the first 4 weeks of training. I would focus simply on the first 3 exercises, which are the Tailor pose, the horse squat, and the weighted pancake. This is going to be enough to start conditioning that middle split position, conditioning the tendons and the cartilage around it, and getting strong. I think Emma actually recommends having at least a 2 or 3 minute horse squat to hold before starting middle split isometrics, and that's the main reason. The second would be to start with less volume. If you're new to loaded mobility, this is going to be quite intense, so just start with 2 to 3 sets for a couple of weeks and warm yourself up into it. Don't just jump straight in at the deep end. So as I said, that's kind of the routine. Let's just take a look at what I'm doing on a daily basis. I have a kind of full body mobility routine that involves a mixture of moving mobility exercises as well as some static stretching. Something I do daily. It's a bit of an adaptation of the full body stretching routine I did a while back, and I'll be making a video soon detailing exactly what I do in that routine. However, there are a few that are specific to the middle splits. The first is the frog pose or frog stretch, and you're simply going to be kneeling down, pushing your knees as wide as you can, and then kind of rocking back and forth, opening up your hips. It's going to take a lot of pressure off the knees, and it's going to be a lot more focused around the hips. It's also a nice low intensity exercise, and it gets you a little bit of movement into that region so you can find any tight spots. I like to spend 1 to 2 minutes in this position, moving in and out of it, holding different parts, just to find any tight spots that I have. The next is a hip flexor stretch complex. I kind of don't do anything too in particular here. I just spend, again, 1 to 2 minutes on each leg, and I kind of move around from different hip flexor stretches and positions, trying to find any tight spots that I have. The final exercise that I like to use is a side lunge to Cossack squats. Here you're just going to start in kind of the same position as a 5-step horse swan, so your legs wide. You're going to slide on down into a side lunge on one side. The key here is maintaining that foot flat on the floor on the leg that is straight. You're going to pause briefly, and then you're going to rotate round into a Cossack squat, which basically means you're going to lift that flat foot and turn it so it faces up at the sky. Hold that for a couple of seconds, rotate back round into the side lunge, back up, and repeat 5 reps on each leg. But that is it for today, guys. That is kind of the routine, what I'm doing on a daily basis and what I'm doing in the main loaded mobility sessions. As I said, links to everything in the description down below. Emmett Lewis, the full routine, and also our door. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this particular routine. What do you reckon to my middle split routine? What would you add? Would you make any changes? Are you gonna give it a go? If you just enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button and support the channel. If you have a friend who is also struggling with their middle splits, then share this video with them. That is it for today, guys. Have a strong week and peace.